Okay, so today I'm going to show you how I paint my molds. I have a couple different ones I'm going to do today. This one will be a really pretty Aztec heart. Here's like a St. Patrick's Day one. This one's a desert heart, and then last is a bass fish. So most of my painting that I do, I use these Sharpie paint pens. As you can tell, I have quite an assortment. There's tons of different brands, but I have found Sharpie to be absolutely the best. I was cheap, and I used to use these overseas ones, but what happens when you put them in the bag is that it sticks to the bag and it pulls the paint off. So it's definitely worth paying more for paint pens. The other thing that I've tried to do, you'll see people recommend these fine tip bottles. And these work really well if you're going to put details inside a groove where it's not necessarily touching the bag. But what I've found with these as well, unless you put oil paint in them, this just has acrylic and it sticks to the bag and pulls off as well. But I really haven't had any problems with Sharpies. I know some people have, but I really like those. So my favorite Sharpie for outlining is this super thick one. It's the Bold Point. And I like this one because it makes it way faster because it's huge. So you always want to make sure that you've shaken it up. And then as you can tell, this one's huge. To make sure I'm on camera. This one's a really big one, and that really speeds up the process. The other thing that you'll need, so I'll put a video of baking these. I haven't done that yet, but they're super easy. These just use molds. All of these molds are from K&L, and I'll post the link in the comments. But you just throw the beads in. I usually cook them for about 20 minutes on 325 degrees. And you want to make sure that the details are melted enough so that they're nice and flat. That makes it a lot easier to paint. If they're not, then you'll get a lot of bumps and it'll be lumpy and it makes it such a pain. So it's definitely worth making sure that you cook it long enough. The other thing that you'll need is I like to use these little ear Q-tips, because if you're like me, a lot of times I slip and then I paint places that I don't want to, and if you're fast enough you can stop and clean it up with those. So I just take this, and then hopefully you can see, but all you do is run it along the top, and as you can see I don't really have to do a ton of work because it's so fat. So these little details, sometimes I'll go through with a smaller one and clean it up later. But yeah, you're just painting over the top. The eyeballs I'll do with a smaller one. So I do still go over with a fine tip at the end, but this fat one makes it so much easier to get all of these details done. Here there's lots of pretty detail on the fins. This has definitely been one of my most popular molds, especially when fishing season comes around. So when the weather's warm, these ones are great. And then the color, the green is from K&L as well. It's their army green, which I really like. So as you can tell, this really is not taking very long. I'm just making sure that I go over all the parts. And what's nice about Freshies is that they don't have to be perfectly painted. They end up looking good even just with a little bit of extra detail added. Okay, so now I have all of my main details added in. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to find my fine tip, fine point pen. And now I'm just going to go through and I'm going to hit those parts that I missed earlier. So it's literally just like drawing with a marker, right? You're coloring in the blanks. So I'm going to go over this part. I'm going to get the details on the fins. It's not really smart to do this with the super fat one, just because then if you mess up, it makes a big mess. So yeah, I like the little one for these. I'll add some more details to that fin and connect that dot. So for my wholesale price on these, I definitely charge $7 because there's just, a lot of details that you have to go and add in. So make sure when if you're making these to sell, that you're really thinking about your time, because your time is worth it. Okay, and ta-da, there we go. So that one's all painted. That's how I do the bass. So as you can tell, it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. So now all of these ones that I'm going to paint today, they're just going to be painted black. That's kind of what I tend to paint mine, but you could do whatever color you want. I just like the black because it has that thick point. So this one's a desert one from K&L. And then again, and this is literally all I'm doing this whole video. So if you're bored, you can just kind of stop because it's the same thing. But you just take it and you just color it over. And it's kind of fun to start to see that pattern show up. This one has some really fine details as well. So I'll just go in at the end and add those in. But yeah, you're just coloring over that. And then you want to make sure you give these some time to dry before you shove them in a bag. I let mine dry like maybe 10 minutes. See, so there I messed up. So I'm just going to take this cotton swab. And then you can, if you're fast, you can swipe it off and then you really don't notice too much. I mean, you can tell a tiny bit, but it really isn't too big of a deal as long as you're fast. But if you let it dry, then you're in trouble because you won't really be able to clean it up. Oh, but I was saying I usually let these dry like 10 minutes. These are nice because the Sharpie paint pens dry really fast. So there I got all my outlining done, and then I'm just gonna color in the middle. There we go. I always do these while I watch TV. Honestly, I hate this part of Freshies. They look cool, but I always get so bored. I feel like it takes forever. But it is fun to get to see everything start to show up. So I got all the fat details done. So now I'm going to go back to that fine point pen. And it's hard to tell, but there are some details kind of in those cracks. So I'm just going to go through and paint over those. Paint over that crack. And there's little ones here. These are like the hills in the desert. I love this mold. I think it's so pretty. Okay. So there's one more there, one more here, and one more there. Ta-da! So there's that one. That one is all finished. Okay, now let's look at the next one. So here's a Lucky Shamrock. And again, gotta have my favorite handy black marker. And you could use a thinner one. Like sometimes I'll use just the medium point. So medium point is about this thick. But like I said, that thick point, it just makes it so much faster. Really speeds things up, which I like. Okay. So this part's fun here. That's kind of the look that you get if you don't cook it enough. So this one I probably could have cooked just a little bit longer. And you can fix it. It's not the end of the world. It just takes more time. So especially when you get busy and have a lot of Freshies to make, these undercooked ones end up being such a pain because they take up so much more of your time. This one, let's see, yeah, there's lots of details in here. There's lots of striping, which looks really fun. It's always cool to see them come to life because when you first make them, they always look so flat. And then as you add all the details, then they look really cool. This one I am definitely going to use my smaller one on a lot of these just because I don't want to mess it up and have to redo it. So I'm going to pull that one out. The nice thing about the fine tip is it can also help you fix these bumpy lines as well. So I'm just going to go through. See, like I said, it's not the end of the world. Once you go through and fix it, you really can't tell if it's undercooked, but it does make it take longer since you have to go over it again. Okay, so I'm just going to get all my outlining done. And then as always, you can hit a like if this video helped you, subscribe if you want, so that you can get notified when I post other videos. Mine's just mostly a Freshie video page because I think it's fun to make videos because I know that would have really helped me out when I first started. Okay, so now I'm just going to add in some of these details. So this part says Lucky. So if I go in and paint those, then you can read what it says. Okay, there we go. Oh yeah, here's part of the K. It's really tall. And this part, so yeah, these lines usually stick out a little bit more, which makes it easier to paint. But again, I didn't quite cook it long enough, which means that they didn't melt into the cracks as much as they could have. So there you can see the Lucky. And then there's just some details that are falling into the middle. So there's these little lines. Okay. So as far as molds go, there's two companies I really like buying from. As I said earlier, all of these are from K&L, and they really have good molds. I've liked all of theirs. And then I also like buying from Natoli's Creations. They have a lot of really cute designs too. Oh, there's a couple more here, and I think, yeah, that's all of it. So there you go. There is the Lucky Shamrock. Let's see. Oh yeah, here's just a couple specks. And there's one more. Okay, there we go. Lucky is all finished. So then the last one, this one's super easy. This one's just an Aztec heart. And then again, my favorite fat Sharpie. This one is cooked long enough. You can tell because it's really smooth. And it's not lumpy. And you can always throw molds back in if you don't cook them long enough. I am just always impatient and I don't want to wait longer for them to cook. So sometimes I just try to make do, even if they're just a little bit on the lumpy side, because it really isn't the end of the world. But I'm just gonna go through and color these. Again, it's so cool to start to see the pattern actually show up. This one's one of my favorites. I'm glad they made it. I was a little slow getting it out for Valentine's Day, but people are still ordering it, so it's a good one to add to your collection. So as you can tell, this thick Sharpie makes it super fast. Each one only takes a couple minutes, if that. But then keep those Q-tips close, just because your hand, it likes to slip. At least mine does. I've never had the sturdiest hand. Okay, there we go, there we go. Now let's look and make sure, see what we've got so far. There's like little points that you could paint more if you wanted to, but that takes a lot of time, so I'm not going to do that. There's a triangle there and a triangle there. Okay, so now I'm on the last little piece. So with this thick one, the thick Sharpie, it really goes quick, but it gives you a nice polished piece that looks like you spent forever coloring it, even though you didn't. It's almost like a shortcut. I love shortcuts. Okay, so now last bit, I'm just gonna clean up a couple of these lines on the edge. Everything else looks really good though, so there's really not too much to fix on that one. Okay, and there you go. So you just saw the Aztec heart, we made that Lucky Shamrock, the desert, and the bass fish, and I like to hang the fish like that. Okay, there you go. Hopefully that helped you learn how to decorate your molds.